Shut up and sit down.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Tacticam. Tacticam is the easiest way to begin filming your hunts. Now, whether it's the budget-friendly Solo or the 4K Tacticam 5.0, Tacticam has something for all levels of self-filmers. They even give you the ability to capture the shot through your scope for you rifle and crossbow guys, or maybe for your kids. I know my daughter's going to be going out on her first hunt this year, and she's going to be using a rifle. And they have a film through scope system that allows you to capture that shot with a Tacticam, and you'll get to see it right through, magnified through the scope, whatever you're seeing. So you definitely check them out at Tacticam.com. Got to give a shout out to our newest Patreon, Brian Britsky. Hope I'm saying that right, Brian. He's from Rhode Island, and this is the second guy that's reached out to us through Patreon. He's found the show, he's following us, and he's decided to support us through Patreon, which is basically a crowd-funded thing for creators. So if you want to support financially through some way or another, Patreon's basically the best way to do that, and they've set up a platform totally allowing that to happen. But this guy isn't on social media. He's not a big social media guy. So, I mean, the power of podcasts and things like this are just amazing. We're reaching people that, we normally wouldn't just through the normal avenue. So I want to thank you so much, Brian, and you are entered in now to our quarterly giveaway. And you picked a great time because we're going to be doing this giveaway. The second quarter comes to an end at the end of June, and we're giving away a Traeger pellet grill. So I wanted to do that because as the quarter falls, it's going to fall right before the 4th of July. So I'm actually going to pull the winner for this next week, the end of next week. So probably the 25th or so, in hopes that I can get that grill ordered, shipped to you, and you'll have it in time for your 4th of July cookout, because that's what I would want if I was the winner. It would be one of those things where it'd be super cool. It still might not show up in time, but we're going to do everything that we can. So if you guys are interested in our giveaways, we do quarterly giveaways for our patrons, and we were just pulling one, but we've got so much stuff that we're giving away. We're pulling multiple winners. So the big gift, big prize is the Traeger 575 Pro Pellet Grill with the wireless technology. We're also giving away to someone else a Tacticam Solo camera package, like I just outlined. It'll mount right to your riser, to your stabilizer, and you'll be able to film your hunt that way. Base Map is giving us a pro membership along with a swag pack. It's like a shirt and a hat and all that stuff. And so if you're interested in that, you can check that out at patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles. And like I said, we're pulling a winner within the next week to 10 days. So it's going to be before the July 1st deadline. And like I said, I'm going to do that just because, I appreciate everybody that does support us. And right now, excluding like my family that supports us, there's 50 people. So you basically got a 1 in 50 chance. It's a bit better than 1 in 50 because there's 51 or 52. So you have better than a 1 in 50 chance of winning something. But that pellet grill is going to be the way to go. And then there's another thing that I'm involved in just recently, just started up this week, which is the Vitals Live learning session. So I wanted to put this out there. Basically, it's live seminars from some of the biggest names from our style of hunting. And these seminars are given live through a Zoom platform, Q&A, viewer participation. These are video, so it's kind of like a video podcast, but you're in the room and you get to ask questions and you're present and watching the whole thing. And it's a paid subscription per month thing, but there's multiple seminars every week and they're videoed. And basically all I'm doing is they just reached out to me and said, you are not an expert at anything. However, you can talk. So can you moderate some of these guys? So we've done 2 so far with John Eberhart, and we'll be doing a strictly Q&A session with him on June 28th. And so that's a Sunday. But next week, this week, that'll be coming up the week of the 20th or so, the early 20s in June, is going to be Dan Infalt. So there's going to be a scouting seminar with Dan Infalt, and then there's going to be any topic Q&A, ask him whatever you want with Dan Infalt. So there's going to be 2 with Dan Infalt next week. I won't be moderating those. Those are going to be moderated by Dan's good friend Mario Traficante, and a great hunter in his own right. So he'll be able to impart his knowledge as well. And then they're also doing startup showcases. So next week's showcase is going to be Austin Cantola from Genesis 3D Printing. So he's making all the 3D printed bow hangers, stick hangers, stick quiver type products. And so he's going to kind of get on there, and it's going to be a video, where you can ask any questions about anything that he's doing there. And then towards the end of June into July, we're going to have the DIY Sportsman Gearak Brawl going over a bunch of different topics as well as Q&A. And then the rest of July will be filled with more of Dan, John, and Garrett. And there's some other hunters that are on the hook, but I don't have all the details, so I don't want to put their names out there just so that but it's really something. It's cool. I mean, it's really cool. If you guys like podcasts, and one of the cool things about podcasts is you think that you're in the room, and then now this gives you the opportunity to have that same experience, but be able to ask questions. And I mean, if you've ever looked into going to one of Dan's seminars or one of John's seminars, I mean, the cost on those is, it can be a lot, and that's without the travel to get there. So you're able to have kind of a very similar access, to ask these guys questions, all from the comfort of your own home. So that's pretty cool. And for our Patreons, we're going to be doing a monthly giveaway rather than a quarterly giveaway, and one of the subscriptions to the Vitals Live. So we're going to give that to one of our Patreons to be able to go in and check that out. Some of our Patreons are already in there. I've already seen them and had some good feedback from them on that. So that's just something else to check out, and you can check that out on thevitalslive.com. Like I said, I'm moderating that, so I just wanted to put that out there, that it's a really cool product that's out there. I think it's pretty cool. So today's episode is pretty awesome as well. You want to talk about a motivating guy, Tim Bunao. I've been following this guy for a couple years on social media, and I mean, you want to talk about the guy that's living the dream. He was a hunter fisher his whole life, kind of gave it up, went, rode BMX professionally, caught a catfish, boom, he's right back into the outdoors, and goes from upstate New York, packs up and moves to Montana. And he and his roommate set a goal of collecting 100 sheds this season, and they got 137 sheds. Just seriously living the best life out in Montana, and Tim's a great guy. It's a great conversation. I know you guys are going to love this episode. So with that, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it, and enjoy the episode. Thanks. Hey everybody, Adam and John back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit of shed hunting, summer scouting stuff with a guy that I've been talking to through social media for a couple years now, probably since one of our first probably 10 episodes. I know we had Greg Litzinger on, and then my buddy Kyle, who was we were talking some train to hunt, and Litzinger had mentioned our guest's name, and he's like, you got to have him on. And so we've just been kind of going back and forth, and I've heard him on at least one other podcast. Tim Bunao, he's East Coast guy. Now he's transplanted to Montana. He's made the jump that we all dream of, and he's headed out there to the great wide open. So how are you doing tonight, Tim?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Uh, it's actually kind of a chilly night here. It's like 70 degrees, but yeah, can't complain. I'm 59 days away from starting to hunt. So life's good. Living in Montana, not New York.
So let's hear a little bit of your story, how you started hunting and kind of how you got into it, and then you got out of it for a little while and kind of got a little bit more serious into it. How'd that all go?
Yeah, well, I'm from upstate New York, upstate PA. I actually lived right on the border. For the most part of my younger days, whatever I guess you'd say, during the summertime, I would, during the weekdays, my mother would, ship me off to, one of her friend's farm, basically. And I worked, 4 a.m. as a 8-year-old, getting up, milking cows. And as soon as our chores were done, he'd let us loose with a 22 and we'd go pick off woodchucks all day long or squirrels or, basically what kids do back then, of course, when it was acceptable. But yeah, I really got into the hunting, kind of through them, and I kind of branched off on my own. I spent a lot of time, during high school. Instead of going to parties and stuff, I actually would go to the local Blockbuster and rent, Eastman's Journal and, those videos and, Realtree. And I mean, Eastman's Journal back then, elk were just a mystical creature. For a small town in PA, and the do-it-yourselfer wasn't really even existent back then. But yeah, it was shortly into high school. I moved in with my father, basically 45 minutes away into upstate New York, where that's where I took my hiatus for a little bit. I was introduced into the BMX world. I fell in love with that one. And I basically spent the next 13 years after my senior year riding BMX. It took me to Louisville, Kentucky. I rode for a clothing company down there. I traveled all over, mainly all over the East Coast, and really never made it west too much. Traveling, riding, going to different cities, meeting some BMX legends. The late Dave Mira, got to sit back and drink some 40s and listen to some stories there. I got to meet Matt Hoffman. I actually went to dinner with him and a bunch of other guys. So, that part of my life was a little bit different from what we're doing now. But it was actually a chance fishing trip. I never even touched a fishing pole in that 13 years. And one of the guys from Alabama, he was in town, and said, let's go fishing. I don't think either of us had a license either. So we went down to the Ohio, and first cast, I landed it was like 65-pound blue cat. And that was it. That was kind of the rekindling of the spark. And it was like a light switch. I kind of really stopped, riding. I made the move back to New York within a year, and I dove right into hunting, head on. And I think I was in New York for 7 years when I finally made the decision. And I'd asked myself, give myself 3 reasons why not to make the move to Montana, and I didn't have a single legit reason, other than the fact that my family's there, but yeah, I had to do it for myself. And, it was within a month of me making that decision, I was, stepping foot in Montana.
That's crazy. Now, when you moved, I told you when I it was texting you that I was going to throw you some curveballs. Maybe you won't get this reference, but maybe some of our listeners will. But I got a good feeling. So when you were going back and forth from those Eastman's hunting journals in the Realtree, did it switch over to the rad racing once you went over to your dad's?
Oh, Crew Jones all the way.
I was going to ask you if you were more of a Bart Taylor, Rod and Rex, or maybe you were like Hollywood Mike Miranda. I mean, what was more your style?
Oh God, Hollywood Mike Miranda. That's like throwback right there. Wow, I haven't heard that in
Team
years.
Hutch,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, Team Hutch all the way. Um, yeah, I mean that actually when I was at my father's, that was kind of a difficult time. Um, it was getting tossed back and forth from what I've been doing for the past, for my younger days of constantly living in the woods and all that kind of stuff, and then introduced into this new um, sport, where I was in Pennsylvania. Uh, there was racing, but all these guys there's trails. These guys are hand digging some massive trails, and then at night they're going on street missions and going to skate parks on the weekends and stuff like that. And so that started taking a lot of my time, and that's what ended up getting me out of the woods a little bit more. And plus, a lot of it too, it might have been a little bit of peer pressure on that one. I didn't have anybody to hunt with then. At my father's. My father isn't a real hunter, so I my the kids I met there, being new to the school, were all BMXers, so it was kind of fit in, that and that. I just fell in love with it, and I became pretty decent at it. Pretty good at tucking and rolling too.
John had a little stint with some BMX racing in his childhood. Oh, I keep pointing us over here to a BMX trophy on the wall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was 3 boys in my family, and that was our it was go to rent a movie, and there was 3 boys, and my 2 brothers always rented rad racing every single time, and I think it was just to spite me because I was like, can't we watch something else ever? And there was 2 of them, so there was 2/3 of the time we rented movies, it was always rad racing. So I can talk to you all about Hell Track and the whole works,
Yeah,
ass sliding,
Man, there's one thing that I do wish I could have done back when I was riding. I wish I could have found the cereal bowl,
right?
the Kix bowl there. I would have loved just to pop in there and pop out just once.
Oh yeah, do a backflip out of it, right? Like Crew Jones.
Yeah, I mean, the attempt would have been there, but whether it had been landed as smooth as Crew, I don't know. Probably not.
You over rotated. No shit. Yeah, a little tangent there, but I thought I'd throw that in there for a little nostalgia.
Yeah, that's good. Enjoyed that.
One of the things when I heard you on the other podcast, and this was like kind of when we, we were first starting out, and we, for me, I grew up with, a big chunk of private land a long ways away. And I always thought public was like a less than thing. And I think I messaged you back and forth about this, and I think the listeners have heard it. But, for me, you said your take on public land, and it was like pretty much the opposite, like where you were able to go out and, there was all this land to use. So, with you, what's your philosophy and everything on like public lands? Because I thought, what you had said, it was like spoke to me, because I always thought of it as like I say, like, oh, you don't have property to hunt, so you have to hunt in public.
Yeah, I mean, it just I when I was younger, I mean that farm was was private. It's a absolutely huge chunk of private land. And I remember being younger and almost scoffed at people that hunted public, and like the stigma of people hunting public was like it's dangerous over there, there's people everywhere and this and that. And you know what, it's I enjoy the challenge of it now. I guess maybe views have changed, especially for me being out here. The ability to have all this public land at your dispersed is it's amazing. I don't know why people wouldn't want to take advantage of it. It just opens up so many opportunities, and it also helps. I think it helped me as a a hunter, especially in the how do you want to say it, like quick decision game. Like your plans can get messed up so quickly, you know, just by one person. So you have to kind of be on your toes a little bit there.
Okay. Like, I guess what being in upstate New York, I've heard, and we've talked extensively with Litzinger, and we've got some friends and Patreons and stuff that are over in the New York area, but and we know PA is super heavily hunted, but what's the public land like in upstate New York, and what's the hunting pressure? Because, I mean, again, with podcasts and more, I guess, information being out there, and now with Onyx and all this other stuff, we're seeing more and more people, but New York isn't one of those states where I think of as like being a big hunting state.
Yeah, I mean, if we're speaking of strictly bow hunting, I probably went 2, maybe 3 years of maybe running into like having to change my, my game up a little bit. A handful of times. Mainly, I never really bumped into anybody in the woods, but mainly parking lots and stuff like that. Now, gun season, on the other hand, I mean, that's kind of another reason why I even stopped, gun hunting. It's just, nobody hunts, opening day. It's just straight, get out the vehicle, drop these people off here. We're going around here and we're driving. We're going to push this wood. We're going to push these woods and this and that. But I mean, as far as bow hunting, you can easily outwork people. And I would assume, just within that year and a half, of being gone, not much has changed in that, my location. And I was upstate, kind of by Syracuse area, up and around there, over by the Catskills. And, it's, as far as the pressure wise, for bow season, you can easily work around it. And again, a lot of people don't want to work. Even with the knowledge that's out there, you still kind of see, I'm still a very active member on the Hunting Beast, and you see people all gung ho until the work starts, and then they kind of just fall off.
And that was going to be my follow-up question to that was, do you think it's because you're hunting spots that like suck to get into, or that are, kind of that next level, or is it just because there's not that many hunters, or that, you're not seeing that many bow hunters?
Well, I mean, obviously the rut, you see people out there, but, the first in, last out, kind of thing. Like there's a couple of times, some of my sets were, almost parking lot sets. You could hear, I was already set up in the tree. You could hear people driving in, getting out. And then while, it's 10 o'clock on November 11th, 10 o'clock in the morning, beautiful morning. And all of a sudden that same vehicle that you heard come in after you, shut the door, start the truck up, rip out of there. It's like, that kind. And if it's 70 degrees out in October, middle of October, beginning of October, it's too warm. You aren't going to move, this and that, excuses kind of on it. But, then again too, some areas, I gauge my areas, by my own suffering. If I get into an area and I'm like, what the hell did I just do to myself, or what the hell am I getting myself into? I probably need to be back in there. And that's going to be everybody's own personal gauge. And I think that's actually, as I've done it more and more, I've pushed myself into farther and deeper spots too. Like, well, I've done worse than this. I can go back a little bit farther. And the next time, it's like, well, this is going to suck. My feet are going to be wet for the next 4 hours, evening. But you know what? It's only 4 hours. I'm not out here for a whole entire night. I know how to get back to the vehicle. Deal with it.
Me and John are both looking at each other laughing, because we've told the story a million times about John in the spot where it's gonna kill him.
Yeah.
And then the spot, where I go, like, I can't go in there. I've went over my boots every single time I go in there, and I've went in there with hip boots and went over those too because I just got too cocky. And it's like that's exactly where I'm like I know that there's good deer back here. I just know that there is, but it's a terrible spot like to access. But I've never seen anybody near there.
And that's right there. It tells you, that's probably where I should be. But actually, I have one. He's a friend now. He was a friend before back in high school, but we didn't really talk to each other for a while. But anyways, he started hunting, and he was asking questions and this and that, and it got to a point where I'm like, I started kind of like, you should check this area out, check this area out. Anyways, long story short, he had found an area that I was in, and he's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go back up in there and this and that. I'm like, man, I kind of pointed you in all these directions. I'm kind of, there's deer back there. I'm trying to, get on and learn a little bit more. Be, respectful towards each other. And he's like, I think I'm gonna go back in there and this and that. This is public land and blah blah blah. I'm like whatever. We didn't really get into an argument about it. Just kind of over texting battle kind of a deal. But it was, I don't know, maybe a week or two later, he's like, yeah, you can have that spot. I'm not going up in there. He got there and he's just like, yeah, I'm not climbing that hill. So,
I mean, John, have you run into that with the guys that you talk to, like your buddy Jason there and that? Because I know that with Frank and Chris and my brothers, when I say this is where I'm going, they're like, you can have it. So.
Yeah. Well, my buddy Jason, he used to do all that, and now he's to the point where, like, I'm just gonna hang 5 stands, and I'm just gonna walk back and hunt those 5 stands. And I'm like, well, dude, then you're gonna see, you got a good area, but you're gonna watch the bucks walk underneath the other stand that you're not sitting in, and there's a reason for that because they know you're not in that one, you're over there in this other one. So, but
that's a pattern.
Yep.
And so for you, Tim, for the listener, what is your style of hunting? I mean, are you, when we talk to, Greg Litzinger, he says, I'm a terrible rut hunter. These are the dates that I like to hunt. This is when I usually, get it done. Or, are you just strictly a bed hunter and you're trying to kill them, first sit, first time, what's your philosophy?
I think I've had my best encounters. Now, when I started hunting again, I think this would be my 9th year back. My first 2 years, I was, not hunting for a while, being away from everything. I immediately picked up magazines and all that kind of stuff. And, it was automatically, I 6 or 7 comfort zone stands, spread all over, this and that. That's when I found the beast, and that's when I got into, the bed hunting. So, I really picked up on that. I really started focusing on the bed hunting. As far as the rut, upstate New York, where I was, the deer density is so low. It's almost like watching, grass grow sometimes. It's just, you could have a whole entire, 4 or 5 does out in front of you for 2 days straight. And, you might see the same little dink come by 2 or 3 times, get kicked out of there. But, anyways, I picked up on the bed hunting, and, I think there's a time and place for every single tactic. Obviously, rut hunting, pretty much your funnels, you set your doe bedding, but everything prior to that, it's all situational. But if you really break it down, to me, deer do, 2 things. They eat and they, sleep. They gotta get from point A to point B. It's just a matter of figuring out which one's which. So, as far as the deer, it's more, I guess you say, just whatever situational.
Man, as a podcast listener, I can just tell you that that's like the worst thing to hear, because you're like, man, like it's like I know, but this is the situation. Like,
Right, what's the
what's the
situation?
good situation? Like, and you're not the only one, so I'm not. It's not like I'm dogging on you, because I mean, it doesn't matter if it's John Eberhart, Dan Infalt, anybody. They ask like, well, it's just situational. It's
Right.
like, well, how the fuck do you know what hot sign is? How do you know? Like,
You go out and figure it out.
like-
You got to put your time in.
it's situational.
I know, and I was that person too at one point in time when I was, I first found Dan, and listening to these guys, like Andy May and Joe Elsinger, like reading these guys talk and this and that, and like, you got to set up on this. I'm like, well, how do you know? Like, what is that? It's just keeping all those, what those guys say, even through podcasts, what people say, and in the back of your mind, and then all of a sudden when you see it in front of you, you're like, holy shit, that's what he's talking about. Then it starts the toss, even more, dilemma in your head, like, well, do I continue on what I was doing, or do I set up now? Like, what is over here, but I want to be over there, so yeah, sorry, but yeah, for me, it's situational.
No, I mean, I totally get it. And when you're talking about your little text battle with your buddy there, for me now, because like when I look at spots now, I try to, for the most part, and it's kind of wrong. I'm trying to learn new areas, so I'm trying to pick areas that I haven't been and just put a spot on a map that I think would look good, and then go in there. And then it's a lot easier to have that aha moment. But then you still have to, like, I guess you have to have the restraint or the understanding to know, like, what you're getting yourself into, because you might be, let's say, 70 yards or 100 yards off of like where that point is that you put on the map, and you run into some really good sign, and you're like, but I wanted to be over there. And then it's like, should I go? Should I stay? Should I? But I mean, I think that that's one of those things that's, somewhat reassuring. It's like, I thought that there would be something here, and then you walk in and you're kind of finding, the sign or something promising.
Yeah. God, there's nothing better than, cyber scouting a new spot, dropping a pin, and then being like feet away from a bed, where that pin dropped. You're like, I knew it. I'm onto it. I got this. And then you be completely humbled when you set up on it and nothing's going right.
Right. Exactly. It was, it's a different season bed. It's early season and it's late season, or it's late season and it's early season. And so with that cyber scouting and that, how did that transition go from, all right, so you're in upstate New York, you say, all right, I can't find a reason why I shouldn't go to Montana. Now you're in Montana. Where do you hunt, or how did you go about?
Like, where do you start now?
I mean, there's a lot of public land out there, and proximally to where you're at, there's a lot of people that like to spend time in the woods. So how did that go?
Well, I guess, right when I got here, it was kind of like the same. I just started marking spots, and then started driving to them. And the thing with Montana is you're gonna drive. You're gonna drive a lot. I think this year I actually remember to look. It was a couple weeks after I just purchased a vehicle a year ago. And it was a couple weeks after the year anniversary. I looked, and I'd put on a little over like 37,000 miles.
Jeez.
Just in driving. Now, of course, I work, and doing the math on that one, that was about 5,000 miles of driving, working. But I don't really have much of a social life, and that's kind of by design, because I want to get to know these areas better. I want to buck the curve out here. And, and plus I just love being outside anyways, if it's 10 degrees out, I'm bundle up, go, like, nose might be cold, but that's about it. But, just just driving, just going. And then it was kind of like, you start to relate stuff. As you're driving, it's vast, it's open country. Like I said, you're driving for 2 hours, you got nothing to do but look. So as you're driving, all of a sudden you're starting to, realize that wow, every time I see, something like this, there's deer over there. And then kind of, correlating everything like that. Cause it is completely different from New York State. New York State, you're looking for, leeward ridges, the points and all that. Here it's flat country. For the most part, for the river bottoms and everything. If we're talking about whitetail. Now, I do have some interest in going to Northwest Montana. Now, Northwest Montana has, if you're a numbers guy, Northwest puts out more Boone and Crockett's in the state, per year than any other, part in it. The problem is it's Grizz country, it's cougar country, it's wolf country, and it is mountain country. The deer numbers are lower, but numbers don't lie on that one. They're there, and so using those those tactics from back in New York up there, I really want to do that. But as far as learning back here, or learning again here, it started out driving, just driving around and relating everything to where everything was. And then from there, it was kind of just diving in. The thing is, though, whitetail, they're not afraid to be in the open here, but they still need cover. They want cover around, whether that's tall grass, some coulees, or river bottom. So that's kind of just like, you have water source, you have a little bit of cover. It's kind of like everywhere else. There's going to be deer there.
So, are you primarily hunting whitetail now, or out there? Are you going after antelope or elk? I mean, going after everything, or is it
everything but mule deer?
Mule deer.
Because our deer tags are for either deer. Mm-hmm. And one of these days I'll get around and going after mule deer. My buddy John, who I did the shed hunting with, he went out and got a mule deer last year, and up into an area he saw some really some good ones. And I've seen a few good ones, drive around and everything, but, I personally want to notch a couple, bigger whitetails first. Because I just can't get the whitetail out of my blood either. That's kind of my issue too, but yeah, antelope, elk, everything I can possibly hunt, I guess. I started turkey hunting again this year. I did a spot and stalk on one. It was a Jake, but I ended up, getting in 24 yards, smoked them. Bear next year, spring bear, again, start doing that, with a bow.
Sweet. So for, we're heading out elk hunting, but primarily, we talk a lot of whitetail and a lot of whitetail strategies and things like that. I guess we don't. Our guests do. You don't want our tactics. But for the whitetail out there, I mean, is it as big of a deal as it is, in the Midwest or up in the, out east for you, or is it just another?
Well, I'm gonna kind of have a side note on that. Like I'm going out to Montana for my hunt. I got the combo tag, so I have my elk tag, whitetail, mule deer, plus I have an antelope tag. Well, my buddy who lives in Bozeman, he's like, the whitetails out here, like everyone hates them. They're like goats. So is that the same in your area too?
Yeah. So, a gentleman, a guy told me once, you shoot the mule deers for the antlers, and you shoot the whitetail for the meat. Mule deer just grow bigger antlers, but yeah, it really doesn't seem like too many people paid much attention to the whitetail. Actually, there's a guy, Troy Pottinger. He's in Northwest Idaho. I listened to a podcast. He's been out here his whole entire life, and when he started bow hunting whitetails, he had a guy tell him, why would you bow hunt whitetails if you can shoot them with a rifle in the rut? I think that's kind of the same main, mindset that a lot of people have around here. The open country.
Right.
They're running wild, around. You can road hunt here. So they're, again, appeases to the, that demographic of hunters. So yeah, I mean, they're kind of like, well, I guess if we really need to put some meat in the freezer, let's go drive down the road and, you're going to see them. And, I guarantee, everybody's probably successful on that one. Yeah, they just don't, as far as like the bow hunter too, from all my scouting that I've done, and all the shed hunting I've done, I've seen 2 stands out of, I couldn't even tell you how many pieces of public I've been in. And I think it's legal to leave stands up.
Do you think that, I mean, is that the style, I guess, of hunting? I mean, when we were in Idaho and they were talking about whitetails, everything was just kind of like, spot and stalk, maybe. You'll probably see one, you could shoot one. There wasn't a whole lot of talk of hanging stands or doing anything like that. And my brother goes to South Dakota, and everything is spot and stalk or ground hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
I think a lot of that too, like, you're talking about South Dakota, it's just the terrain.
Not a whole lot of trees.
Not a lot of trees to pick in. Even these river bottoms, some of the areas that you might want to set up on, you can't, and, unless you're using screw and, pegs, if you're trying to be a mobile hunter. The cottonwoods are, as big as around as a Beetle, a Volkswagen Beetle there. So getting a stand, up it and down, of course there's, smaller trees and stuff like that, but, yeah, you just don't see it. I saw someone, from Montana post something about, elk hunting, what's the best, ground blind or, a tree stand, or what about these new saddles? And there was like 12 comments. What the hell's a saddle? Meanwhile, in the whitetail world, it's on fire.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if it's just the mindset, how the guys are, brought up, raised, if it's a generational thing that, but, whitetail properties have just started getting over here, but all their land is like primarily, elk land.
okay.
So I just don't know.
I think it's just like, it's not really a priority. People, like you're saying, they can just go out and shoot them with a rifle if they want one. They're not going to put much
Right.
effort in when they got elk to chase or mule deer.
Right. And, I think, that, that goes to the, a young mule deer, it's, antlers, they're pretty much, if you're going by score, they're going to score higher than most whitetail.
Right.
Yeah, and so
that's why.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you when you said you wanted to get a few good ones or, bigger whitetails under your belt. What is that to you? What's big out there?
So we've seen a couple, upper 160s, around here last year. Actually, there's a field across my house in town that always has deer and it always has, does and bucks. And of course, Ruck came around and, some giant cage came out of nowhere. No idea where this deer came from. Was out in the field chasing does. So, they're around. The shed that we picked up this year, there's a couple, singles, but if you, gave a modest, spread and, don't go crazy with it and everything, you're still looking at your 150s and stuff. Some of the trail camera photos that we got from last year, again, showing the 150s and everything. So to me, that's kind of like, what I'm going for. Coming from New York, that's a once in a lifetime, deer. I've never seen a 150s from the stand. So that's kind of like, my personal goal. Some of the areas that, I've been into and talked to people, farmers and stuff like that, trying to get permission to shed hunt. I've seen some pictures of, upper, 180s and, 190s. So they're there. But I'm not shooting for anything like that. I'm just shooting for something I would never see in New York, basically.
Okay. Okay. So,
if that makes sense.
well, I mean, so you kind of just have your almost like out of state hunt mindset without the don't eat a tag, right? So, I mean, kind of like our thoughts when we went out of state was like we went out of state for a reason. So I'm not going to shoot something that I could shoot in Michigan,
Right.
or like that would be, as there's lots of bucks that I'd shoot in Michigan that I won't shoot out of state, and it's a one tag thing, and you're out there for, for a reason, I guess.
Except on the last day of the hunt.
that,
In Idaho.
Yeah, the last day.
well, John, he doesn't care that I didn't shoot, like, I don't know. It's my story, so I can call it a world class elk, this monster, because I wasn't comfortable with the shot. But he will not let me live down this basket rack 8-point that I did not shoot because I tried to stalk in
to 25 yards.
To 25 yards. I got to 32.
That was a total archery challenge. I'm like, we're shooting that shot at 60 yards. At one point when he was stalking down to it, I'm trying to whisper, like, get out of the way, I'm going to shoot him from right here. It was 54 yards where we had seen him, where I'd spotted him at first. He was laying down underneath like a deadfall. It was like a perfect total archery challenge setup. I'm like, dude, we've shot that before. Come on, 12 ring him. But then he got to 35 is what it was. And I'm like, what were you doing? You just had to get down the lip. I was trying to get to 25. I'm like, what? Come on. Well, we're 7. He's like, well, we were 7 miles back in, and I didn't want to wound him. I'm like, yeah, I understand you don't want to wound him, but who cares if it's just, we could cut him in half and haul him out. I mean, come on.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I will never live down.
Never going to let down.
No.
Yeah.
That was he ate that tag.
But, so we brought you on here to talk, you had just posted up some pictures about, you and your roommate, John, getting what to me would be, I guess, putting out a crazy goal for yourself and saying that you were going to find 100 sheds this season. And so for most people, I would say, that would be maybe a lifetime's worth of sheds. And then the people that are putting out those goals are in Iowa on these big leases or the Druries or, something like that. And you guys did it primarily on public land, if I'm recalling. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, last year, when we got here, I was like March, we, actually my buddy from Michigan, Jeremy, his girlfriend, John, and I, we went for basically our first shed hunt. We went, like 2 hours away to this piece, and we're, he's from Michigan. Jeremy's from Michigan. His girlfriend is from Michigan, and John's from Wisconsin, and I'm from New York. So, John's a little bit more familiar with with antlers than what the rest of us are, from New York and Michigan. But he's never really been into shed hunting. And plus, I think too out there, the competition between people and squirrels too out there is a lot, it's a huge factor. But here, that's not the case. But anyways, we go out to this piece, and I think we find 16 all in, maybe about an acre size square. It was a bedding area. Wintertime, pretty, that actually we got hit with some pretty good snow, right about that time. So it probably, forced them up by the food into that bedding area, and, they're all dropped. So we, shed hunted a little bit more last year, and, it was coming up, in January there, and we're talking about shed hunting, and I kind of said, what, I'm going to go nuts. I'm going to go try for 50. And John's like, yeah, I think I'm going to do the same. And, you know what, let's just go for 100. Let's try to find 100 sheds. John's very enthusiastic about that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, geez, like I was saying, his job allows him to get out of work early sometimes, this and that. So if he buys something, he was out every single night. It was like as soon as March 1st hit, it was kind of like I wasn't even home yet, and all of a sudden I get a text, got 2, got 3. I'm like, what the hell, man? But so that was kind of we just it was kind of just a long shot goal, and that actually at one point in time we're like, shit, we could probably get this. And, yeah, I mean, we topped it out with 137. There's 12 match sets. 2 of them were mule deer, and we had John found 1 moose shed, 10 elk, and 17 deadheads, 1 elk deadhead out of it. And that was that's from March 1st to June 1st.
So how many miles did you put on looking for those?
So I'm not a big mile counter, but there was a few times, I primarily the reason why is because I forget to turn the tracker on, honestly. But John was pretty good about it, and it was right before turkey season, which is April 15th, and he had cleared 200 a few weeks prior. I know I was putting on the weekends anywhere between 20 to 30 miles. On the weekends, I was driving out camping. The dog and I would go and give her hell. But we kind of, we're not trying to overestimate, but we're definitely upwards of 450 plus. And that's just shed hunting. Honestly, we're probably closer. We're right around 5, if not more. But we're gonna go. We're going like with 450. We probably both put on between 3,000 to close to 4,000 miles on our vehicles as well. Driving.
And how many properties is that you're checking out, and are you revisiting properties throughout that time?
I mean like just different public land parcels?
Yeah, or like how many pieces of
I couldn't. I would have to go through my Onyx and count shed drop, the pins, but I only visited 4 pieces more than once, and that was primarily because I picked up a decent shed and I wanted to scout it. And a lot of times, going back through there, you'll find another one. So, I mean, yeah, there's times where I picked up, I would pick up 3, 4 times. I'd only pick 1, but I mean, I couldn't really tell you how many without really counting. Off the top of my head, 40, 50, just by myself.
Okay, and so what tips would you have for guys like me that don't find sheds, or guys that are trying, and the balance between is there a different outlook or mindset when you're looking for sheds versus looking for sign or scouting properties? I mean, is there things that you're looking for specifically, and then do you then just walk past the deer sign? Or I mean, because I always find myself like, I should probably go over there, but then I'll find tracks in the snow and I'll just follow them that lead me in a completely different direction, and then I'll find old rubs,
Right.
and then I'm looking around for
Squirrel.
Yeah, I mean,
Squirrel. Actually, that's kind of the reason why I stopped turkey hunting. I couldn't focus on turkeys. I'd sit up on a turkey, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, look at that rub over there. I'm looking around. I'm like, oh wait, like, this makes sense. And next thing you know, I'm like, hey, I'm not turkey hunting anymore. I'm scouting. So that's why I ended up doing that. But I guess I'd say my first tip to help you guys out with shed hunting would be to definitely leave Michigan and go to Montana. I mean, quite honestly, it's the deer numbers here that made that possible. There's a very high density of it. We just don't have genetics like like in Iowa or Kansas has. But the densities here. And I was the same way. Trying to shed hunt back in New York, I just couldn't because I'd end up scouting, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that you never finding any. You know, you're out there so often. You know, you rarely find a shed here or there. It's a little bit different when you start finding sheds, especially, you find a match and all of a sudden you looking at one, you look up 20, 30 yards away and there's another one, laying there. You think you see another one and it quickly, becomes easy to overlook signs when you start finding the sheds. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway on that. Key features, obviously, giant, shoulder high rugs, big scrapes, obviously stop and mark it, stop mark. It's always a good time to grab a drink. I'm one of the type of people or a bite to eat at granola bar. I'm the type of person like, oh, the next spot. And the next thing I'm done shed hunting. I still haven't had a simple water or food, the whole entire, 4 or 5 hours I was out there. But that's, as far as for out here, that's basically what, it's come to. The thick stuff, obviously thick stuff, anything that's going to knock the antlers off the head. A lot of trails, if you see trails cutting through, some Russian olives out here and stuff like that, you should probably get on your hands and knees and start calling through there because there's probably going to be a shed back in there. And don't get discouraged either. Something out here, shed hunting is quite popular. There's been several times where at first I would be, get down on myself or I want to bail. I'd already be a mile back in or, fully invested into this piece. And all of a sudden I start running into food tracks. But, something I started reminding myself is every year I find last year's sheds. They can't find them all. I've even seen dog tracks, now whether or not they're a shed dog or not, or it could just be like my dog. He just goes with me. People miss them. Even dogs miss them. So, quite honestly, not sugarcoating it. It's night or day difference from the big hardwoods to down here in the these river bottoms and areas. There's a lot more, there's the higher number of deer and the amount of cover is concentrated more. I guess that's probably what it really, mostly relates to.
And then how are you using that information, like when you're outside of those, obviously those big rubs or scrapes or things like that, how are you, when you're finding these sheds or deadheads or, whatever, how are you using that like this year? How are you going to be?
How are you using that information?
Yeah.
So, one of the areas, actually my two biggest deadheads I found were 75 yards apart from each other. And, like I was just saying, when I'm shed hunting, my focus is looking for, these, any glimpse of a tine sticking up out. I found the one deadhead and, I kind of glanced around like this kind of a bedding area. I found the second deadhead and, then I started, okay, well, what's the odds, rifle kill? Okay, not recovered. I have a really close buddy back home who, his dad shot a deer a few years ago, and that deer did a huge circle and made it all the way back around to his bed. I've heard people on the beast, some of the guys on there have talked about how the deer will try to make it back to their bedroom. So after that second one, I started really investigating, ended up finding a couple more sheds, found more beds right around there, and then that was one of the areas I visited a couple of times, and then started breaking stuff down and. Sure shit, that's a good bedding area. Rubs, don't really start until, they get a little bit outside that little pocket of, Russian olives. But, everything just led, the signs leading up, everything's adding up to it. So, as far as the deadheads, that particular instance, that's how I'm using those. Some of the other ones, you find out in the middle of the field, some CRP, stuff like that. It's really just kind of chalk it up as the winter kill. And then, sometimes, some of the antlers, it's, you can figure out if it's bedding or not. I think it's going to be more or less, most of it is going to be winter bedding as opposed to, huntable bedding. So, I don't really pay much attention to that other than the fact that, okay, well, this deer is still alive, he's in the area, he's probably not going to travel too far. So this is an area that I should probably focus on.
And going back to those deadheads and that bedding area, you talk about the beast and you talk about, you know, that's all bedding tactics, etc.
Right.
Other than being thick and that Russian olive, were there any like terrain features or anything that kind of like set that apart or made it one of those spots where, I, like you said earlier, but that's the way, I mean, some of the beds that I've found that I know are buck beds is exactly that. It's like, how the hell would you kill them? Was there any sort of feature there outside of just the thickness?
I mean, there is kind of a moat that runs around it, so I don't see it being filled year round. I'll know shortly if it is. The river's flooded right now, but so it should have some water running through it. But whether it's still filled up during hunting season or not to keep people out of there, I'm not sure. But I mean, as far as train features, it's pretty flat. I mean, there might be that subtle 2 foot 3 foot rise in there and stuff, that they might be up on, which I've heard that they will try to get up on those rises. Most of the beds were just basically underneath the ponderosa pine. I'm assuming the thermal cover throughout that winter. So but there it's definitely a year round use.
And I know before you were doing some video and stuff. Did you guys video any of this shed hunting, or is there anywhere we can check that out?
No, actually, I started to last year, and then I was focused more on trying to film. So I put the camera down and just I wanted the full entire year and everything, and just trying to just enjoy everything without having to mess around with everything. When we decided to try this 100, the goal is 100 sheds. It didn't have any thought that was actually a real possible opportunity. Hindsight, I wish I would have. I mean, I wish I would have done most of it. John, he has a GoPro. He could have done it that way. We could have done something. But yeah, it actually made me. The fact that I didn't made me go out and get a new camera. So
that's always the way that it goes, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I'd have had the camera, I wouldn't have found. I would have found 3.
So what hunts do you have coming up this year outside of your your quest for the 150?
Well, like I said, I got like 59 days from antelope season. I did it last year. My whole entire goal there is to spot and stalk. I'm a huge spot and stalk person. That's part of the reason why I moved out here too. To have the ability to spot and stalk. So, I want to spot and stalk an antelope. I know, the highest percentage to get an antelope, my first antelope would probably be to sit water, but, as much as I want to throw the tag, I want to throw it the way I want it. If that makes sense. I want to go about it. Yeah, so that's for 2 weeks. That's August 15th until, September 5th is elk, and then it's straight elk. My whole entire, season is banked around elk. And then, that ends October 26th or 25th, I believe. And then it's a week break, and then rifle season starts, and that's when I'll start, bow hunting, whitetail.
And so what tips do you have for John hunting Montana for spot and stalk antelope and elk?
And antelope, so yeah, so antelope, I mean, that's something that, again, I just started learning, and I made some big mistakes. And, I think people think spot and stalks are like, you see something, you go after it. There's a lot of patience involved. A couple of guys that I've talked to around here, and, I asked them about, what I do wrong, this and that. And the number one thing I did wrong was I wasn't patient enough. a lot of times, you just got to kind of follow them, or even not even follow them, mark them and leave, and then come back. Wait for them to bed, or wait for them to get in a good position. Don't try to force the train features to work. That's where I failed a lot. Um, on the antelope. Other than that, make sure you can shoot. Cause I should have had an antelope. I had one at 62 yards, and I put it right under his belly. I got to within 20 on one too, but those suckers move, man. Once they see you, they don't slowly stand up and like wonder what the heck's going on. They're gone.
Speed goat. They don't call him speed goat for nothing, right?
Oh man, I think that was like the first time I fully got to see, one, reach those speeds. And I was like, and I wasn't even like, I didn't let my jaw down or like, my bow down yet. And that thing was already 200 yards away. It was wild.
Now, have you tried it with a pop-up decoy, or like the almost like leaping?
I towards the end of it was like the end of the right before elk season started. I went and purchased I think it's a stalker decoy. It kind of goes on your bow.
Yeah.
Now that one too, I learned some some things with that one. Just because you're behind it doesn't mean that you can approach them. Basically what I guess you're supposed to do is kind of you try to get as close as possible and then make your appearance. So you're kind of like within their comfort zone. All of a sudden I was like, oh shit, who's this?
Right.
Popped up here. So, I made the mistake of, following, a buck about a half a mile through sage just because he wouldn't stop, and he'd stop and he'd kind of let me get within 80 yards, and 80 yards seems like their comfort zone. So I get to like 80 and then he kind of gap a little bit and let me get a little closer and then gap away and just wouldn't, commit to it.
John's over here pantomiming sending one. So he's
it's the fun part about it. If there wasn't so many, I wouldn't try it. Like I would have 2 to 3 stalks a day. So you're gonna have the opportunity to. It's just a matter of wait, for the right opportunity to come along on that one.
Sweet.
Being able to capitalize on it. Like I said, I missed that 62. I should have capitalized on that one, but I started the whole entire moving out here. I didn't shoot like I normally do. Throughout the whole entire off season, I just got into fly fishing and I got real heavy into that. And next thing you know, it's season's here. So I definitely chalked that one up to that one. I started developing target panic on all sorts of fronts on there. But yeah, so that's the antelope, and then elk. Actually, you know what? One thing. Do you listen to the Rich podcast?
Yes.
So you're familiar with how he hunts. He hunts the buffer zones, especially out-of-staters. Everybody fantasizes about this big backcountry hunt. 10 miles deep, 12 miles deep. Basically, what people are doing, people are either hunting from the road or they're going,
past
6 to 10 miles back. But there's a huge buffer zone in between there that people are just walking right by. And what, his whole entire thing is, you invest, a whole entire day's worth of hiking to get back into your camp spot. You get back there and then you locate that bull. You blow that opportunity on that bull. That bull can be 10 miles gone, by the next morning. And now you're left 10 miles back with nothing around.
Right.
So his kind of thought, is a buffer zone. And the other thing too is, it seems that, by doing that, you can easily pack up and move, trying to find yourself more opportunity. That's all, he preaches kind of a little bit about, just trying to get as many opportunities as possible, especially for a new guy. So that's something I've taken, kind of into my playbook, and it paid off last year. Opening day, I missed one, a little raghorn, and then I had one weekend that I didn't hear or see an elk all the rest of the time. And I had elk bugling, saw 'em. I got drawn back on two more, and I shoulder hit a cow on the last day, and that was all just within that 2 to 3 mile buffer zone.
Now, are you
Not going all
calling?
the way. Yeah, calling. Uh, never actually, never actually really called. So, the one area that we were in, reading the cow or reading how the bulls were talking, wasn't. I was so excited, man. These bulls were just bugling back at us. We're bugling back and forth, and it would honestly that time frame. Looking back at it, should have just done settle cow calls. So it should have never been bugled to these bulls. They weren't in that mind frame to fight yet. They weren't fully, with the harems and all that. Another instance, I did the opposite. It was later in the season. Actually, it was in October. There must have been a late cow and estrus because these bulls are fired up. Actually, I heard them from a distance. I listened to them work around a mountain, and I doubled back. I cut them off, but from my first mistakes, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna bugle to him. Actually, I think this is the same bull. I call him the dinosaur. He had this real raspy, and he almost like he's a smoker. And yeah, so I just did several cow calls. And what I should have done, because there could have, that time frame, there might have been a cow in estrus that probably would have only been one. I should have challenged him. I probably should have challenged him for that cow, and that probably would have, sparked that up. But again, it's my second year of, my first full year. I've only elk hunted in Colorado once. I didn't know. I was so excited, reading that, but it's gonna be a lot different this year. That's for sure.
Cool.
So, I just want to go back on one thing. Like I said, I follow you and all the stuff on social media, and I don't know if John's familiar. John's a big fishing guy, and I see you with these big ass spoonbill thingamabobs. You talk about dinosaurs, like you talked a little bit about the fly fishing or whatever. Like, what the hell is up with that? Like, what is that fish, and like, what's the season? Is it like our sturgeon where you get one tag and stuff like that, or
dino season? Yeah. So when I moved out here, I've become really good friends with Lucas Seiko, and another group of guys. Basically, one from North Dakota, or one from well, they're both from North Dakota. And then the other one's from Minnesota and Wisconsin, and we're all in this big group chat. But anyways, he invited us out there last year for dino fishing. He showed me these pictures, and I've always been a fisherman from back home, and that was the first thing I saw. And he showed me a picture. I think it was like a 90 pounder, and I was like, I'm in, 100%. So basically, what they are is just it's a paddlefish. They that time frame in May, they migrate up the Missouri and the Yellowstone to breed. And they don't take bait, they don't eat lures. I think they eat plankton. So the only way that you can catch them is by snagging them. So you put a big 8-ounce weight on the bottom, and you're only allowed one treble hook up top. I think it's like a 0 treble hook or whatever, or a 1 or something like that. You put that up about maybe a foot, and you just sit there and you just swing and rip all day long. It's not very fun. At points, your shoulder starts to get worn out. You'll end up with bruises on your ribs from doing it. But man, when that finally sinks into a fish, oh man, it's like the greatest feeling. You just work. Well, I can't say work this year. Actually, it was like the third cast that hooked into one this year. But most of the time, you work and you work and you work, and finally you hook into one of those things. They're a good fighter. They go to the bottom. They do run a little bit, but they might come up or just get their head out of the water. But, yeah, it's just a big prehistoric fish. It's weird looking, just big. So in North Dakota, normally it's, you go there and you buy a tag. The season, is kind of like a quota season, if I remember right. So they say, it'll say like there's 500, tag, or 500 is the quota from day one. Day one would be a, keep day. So it doesn't matter what size it is. If you hook into one, you put the tag on it and you take it to the fish station. And it might be, the next day will be a, release day. So that day you can fish all day long, catch and release, catch and release, catch and release. And then, it's like back and forth until the quota's hit. This year they didn't have it because of COVID. But they did open up a week-long, snag and release, week. So that's what I ended up doing. Going back over there and met up with the fellows and, it's kind of like you said, walleye camp. We just kind of, harass each other and, shoot the shit and, drink a couple beers, cook some good food and have some laughs and, hook into a fish occasionally. And it's a riot, as soon as everybody's out in different points, we're kind of spread out, probably like within a couple 100 yards and everything. And all of a sudden it sounds like Ric Flair's coming down the river. Just, woo! Like someone's got one on and everybody drops their poles and you go running over and, lend a helping hand, give a high five and get right back to it.
Do you guys eat them?
You can eat them. This year you couldn't, because you couldn't keep them, but, yeah, you can eat them. I actually left last year, when they cooked them up. I had to get back to Montana, but I supposedly they're pretty good fish. The reason why, they keep them is they have a caviar. And I guess the caviar, is super good and super, expensive. So that's how, I guess North Dakota gets the money. They, the keep days, they bring them to that fish station, they'll chop them up, but they keep the caviar.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think it's like $1,000 a pound or something like that. Kind of like sturgeon.
Geez. Yeah, you're talking to a couple guys from Michigan here, and we, even though it's frowned upon, I definitely snagged a few salmon in my day, in my youth.
Oh yeah.
And it used to be
legal.
Long ago, but
there's probably about 1,000 tons of freaking lead up by Tippy Dam where it used to be illegal. Guys would come from Ohio everywhere. It was dangerous. I mean,
yeah.
The lead flying and hooks flying, and it was elbow to elbow on each side of the banks. And
you guys have people cutting people's lines.
Oh, everything.
Yeah, we had the same thing in New York, Pulaski, on the Salmon River. Same thing back in the day. Used to be you can snag them, but yeah, I mean you go to some of those popular fishing spots and you can't even see the telephone line. It's just dangling with hooks and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, it used to be like that back in the, everybody cutting lines, fish on, and nobody cared, and people were trying to get under and trying to get to the fish, and people were cutting. Yeah, it's a fiasco.
Yeah. Well, back to the bow hunting thing for a quick second. One of the questions I always ask is, what is your setup? What bow you shooting? Arrows, sight? What you running?
So I am still running the 2014 PSC DNA SP. Running that with a Spot Hog Fast Eddie, the Trophy Taker SmackDown Pro, I believe. Beast Stinger. 10-inch stabilizer in front with a 8 side, and then I just got the Day 6 arrows.
What broadheads?
Actually, I think I'm going with the QAD Exodus.
Okay, I think my brother shoots
broadhead.
those.
What's that?
I said I'm pretty sure my brother shoots those.
So I've asked a couple people, primarily whitetail hunters, if they know anybody, and nobody knows, anything about them. Like, I think I've heard of them, this and that. But you ask like anybody from the West, oh yeah, they're awesome. I know this and that. And a lot of people, love them. It's kind of a strange thing that I came across, since I started looking into them. Does your brother like them?
Yeah. I mean, he's, I think the last 2 deer he's killed, think he killed 2 deer last year with them. And yeah, I mean, they didn't go far. But he bounces around with a lot of different equipment. So it's always kind of hard to see, but I'm pretty sure that's what he killed those 2 deer with last year with no issue.
I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going with. I have been shooting the Wasp drone. But yeah, it's definitely a fixed blade game for me, especially with with the elk. The deadhead I found was a real eye opener too. Their skin is so thick. Their hide is just so dense. And I remember, actually it might have been that Ranch Fairy guy. In one of his videos, or whatever, he tried to push a hypodermic through the hide, and I mean he is like reaming on it just to get like the point to get through the hide. Whereas opposed to like he obviously preaches the double bevels and stuff like that. Where it's sharpened all the way up to the tip, but yeah, just the bone on those things and the hide and the density. I can't. I've strayed away from the mechanicals. That's just my opinion. I had hypodermics for a long time, and I never really had an issue with it, but I just wanted to stop it before an issue happened.
Cool.
And I guess just to close out with just one last question, I guess from your experience going from East Coast to out West, I know that you're not a gear pixie dust type guy, but I think it bears asking, like, from the transition from, Eastern style hunting to Western style hunting, what's been like the one piece of equipment that, you don't want to skimp money on, or the one that's been, the most needed out there? I guess I would just challenge you to say something other than boots, because boots is always it's situational type thing.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, there's actually two things. One is the glass. Definitely. Right now, I'm running Leopold. That's my next major priority is to upgrade to a higher quality glass for a little bit better low light condition. Back east, you don't. Most of my spots back home, you can't see more than 75, 100 yards to the wood, so you don't really need. Then as far as glass in fields and stuff, most of the fields are only 100 yards wide and stuff like that. Out here, you're talking half mile some of these fields and stuff like that. You're using your glass way more out here. Then sorry, not the boot thing, but honestly, your clothing, that having a lightweight system that packs down easy, that you can easily, the weather changes on you so quickly out here. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. It's kind of one of the things I've come to enjoy. Seeing a storm come in, it's kind of like, oh, I got this taken care of. Like you're not kicking me out of here today, Mother Nature. But that's been a huge, thing for me, being able to have a quick light system that packs down easily.
Is there any certain like clothing brand or style that you're,
or even piece, like
right.
This, some people say it's this puffy jacket is the best one, or blah blah blah.
Yeah, the Calvin Active Jacket from Sitka. That's pretty much for my style hunting. I found that I use that more than anything else. I can run a lightweight merino underneath it, and as far as if I'm not sitting and glassing, if I'm moving, that's a good setup all the way down to like 20 degrees. If I'm moving around and stuff like that.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, man, it's been great talking with you, and like I said, I've been trying to connect with you on a podcast here for a while now, and I'm glad we finally got to sit down and do it. And like I said, it's just one of those things where, I try and bring people on here that I was like, man, I'm inspired by you, and like, just, dropping everything, going out there and like chasing your dreams and living your life out there. And so I just think it's great, for everybody here going out there. I mean, John says every day that I see him, and when he's kicking around something, he's like, I'm just going to move out west. I'm just going to move out west.
Yep. My son's 16, and I'm like, dude, why don't you go out to Montana State or something, dude? And they'll have me give me
Oh man, I wish I would have gone to college out here. I had thought about it, but yeah, I mean, I greatly appreciate you asking me to come on. It's been a blast. But if anybody out there, who listens, or whatever, has ever thought about doing it, just do it. I did it. My roommate John did it. We did it he had a job lined up. I did it without a job lined up. The other buddy, Jeremy, him and his girlfriend, they just packed up and did it. It's the 24-hour drive at first was nervous. Like, what am I doing? I guarantee it, as soon as you get foot to where you want to go, if you're an adventurous outdoors person, the Western States you can't beat. It's 365 something to do, even when it's cold.
Well, awesome, Tim. Like I say, thanks again. And I mean, like I said, it's just a great conversation. And once John gets back from his trip out to Montana, and I get back from Colorado, we'll have to reconvene, and John can tell us what lessons he learned, right?
Right.
Absolutely, man. If you need help packing a bowl out or whatever, friends bail out on you, give me a holler. I might be available.
All right.
I'm always down for an adventure.
For sure.
All right. I think that's all we got for tonight, Tim. Thanks.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Shut up and sit down.